When you're scared. I thought, since it's spooky season, I thought it would be the perfect time to kind of talk about what is fear? What does it mean to be afraid? What does it mean to be scared? What does it mean to be somebody who. Because one of the emotions that we have every single day is being scared. I think we all feel a certain level of we kind of share a certain level of quote unquote anxiety or fear or this looking over our shoulder kind of scared that something bad is going to happen to us or anything bad can happen to us. So, what does it really what are the benefits or what are the negative kind of feelings or quote unquote effects of being a scared person or being afraid of anything out there in the world? You know what I'm saying? So let's start off with the most simple thing. There are certain things that are scary to think about. Like, I used to put it like this. I used to be afraid of driving, but that was before I started practicing it. That was before I started driving. I really thought that driving was like a what's it called? It was always such a gamble because every so often, like, you're traveling at such fast speeds and maybe you can't stop in time or you get into like car accidents happen all of the time. So you just kind of have this lingering fear over your shoulder every time you go out onto the road. But at the same time, you kind of just have to make sure that you can control what you can control. You know what I'm saying? You can take care of what you need to. Now, the reason why I was pretty, I was scared of it because I didn't know it all that well, or I wasn't all that prepared, or I wasn't really ready for it at the time. You know what I mean? But now, having been driving for some time now, I just feel a lot more. I feel so much better at it, and I feel so much more comfortable at it. And it took practicing it or being involved in the process for me to really get into it. And I guess that's what the some people who are like afraid of heights, they conquer it by exposure therapy. So they go do activities that involve heights. Like maybe they go hiking and they look over a big rail, or they go to like an amusement park and they get on like a Ferris wheel and they get to the top and they look over the whole thing and they're not afraid of it, is what all I'm saying. There's that kind of way to conquer it, or to those sort of fears or those sort of things that you're scared by, they can be overcome by being involved in it. There are people who are afraid of the ocean. They're afraid of water. They're afraid of like the deep sea, and I think that's a very rational fear to have. Like, there's so much out there that we don't know, and being lost at sea is kind of like one of the worst things that could ever happen to you. I forget the name of the movie or maybe it was like a documentary, but it was kind of. The movie is about these two people who kind of get deserted at sea. They get abandoned. They're like they're divers or whoever, and they go down into the ocean, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna just hang out just for a little bit longer, and then they go there as a team. So it's like a team. What's it called? It's like a team diving thing where, you never go there out there by yourself. You go there in a big group and you all go there on a boat and they kind of watch each other's backs and whatnot. So there are like 20 of these people on the, let's say 20 divers, right? And then there's the one guy whose job is to keep track of, okay, who's still here and who's not. So they do a head count. They're like, okay, we have 20 people here. I counted 20 heads or counted 20 people. All right, that's it. We're heading out. But they actually miscounted and they were missing the last two people. And I just remember having like that. Like that doesn't seem unreasonably scary, or that doesn't seem like something that's not capable of happening. Now, of course, the guy's an idiot for miscounting, but they did abandon them. They left them out in the water, and they were basically being surrounded by sharks. And in the end, you know what I mean? Spoiler alert, they die. Very, very horribly, but those are one of those fears that are so realistic or just as capable of happening as, you know, the worst thing. Now, some people people who are really afraid of that kind of a thing, they would never really go out there deep sea diving, right? They would avoid that, and maybe that's a benefit. That's a positive outlook or of your fear, right? Your fear keeps you out of harm's way. Whereas if you're maybe another positive is that like you're not afraid of it, so you go out there and you experience diving and you really enjoy it and you like the water. You know what I mean? Like you really like swimming, you really like being out there, you enjoy like the group activity or like the team aspect of it, or like the how everybody goes out there together, you know what I'm saying? Like I think there's a lot of benefits to it. And even though that it's potentially scary, you still go out there and you enjoy it. But in the moment it can feel like that. So there is a certain trigger that happens when you're scared. Now you go into fight or flight mode. You go into one of these two states of being. Now I always say that like I'm more of a fight kind of well, it really depends on the situation, right? And I always like to think that I know what situation to fight or flight in, but in reality, it just depends on the moment, you know, how fast things happen. But I think one of the benefits of fight or flight response is it gives your body the opportunity to like figure out for itself what to do, and it also gives you that boost of adrenaline to like make something happen. So it just kind of like that trigger, that kind of response to being scared of something will protect you in the long run. You know what I'm saying? If, let's say, a crazy gunman shows up and he starts, you know what I mean? He starts shooting up the place. Your fight or flight response is going to say, okay, I got to get out of here and I got to run as fast as I can and I got to get to safety. And the adrenaline in your blood, in your body, like all of your senses get heightened. In your scaredness and your fear, you start sprinting as fast as you can, faster than you've ever done in your life. Like that's a positive thing. Or you say the guy's like killing a bunch of people. You're like, I got to go fight this guy and put an end to him. And you get this sudden boost of strength. And you're like, okay, this is my chance to really get him. And it's like, and you get that kind of like mother, that strength of a mother who can lift up a car to protect her baby. You know what I mean? You get this sudden boost of strength. It works out in your favor. I also think that if you're scared, or if you're like, I guess maybe if you're naturally anxious, you have this more, I don't know, you have this kind of self-awareness. You have this heightened sense of you know more of what's going on in your area. You know what I mean? You know exactly what's going on in your immediate space. Because I'd be lying if I said to you that I don't. Like when I sometimes go to a restaurant, I'll choose, or like I'll sit down somewhere and then I'll make note of everything in the area really quickly. I'll be like, okay, I'm here at the window. I can look outside. I'm closest to the bathroom, or I'm closest to this exit. Or when I came in here, do I remember the way out? You know what I mean? Like I always mentally clock where I am and what's going on. Or sometimes I'll go to what's it called? Like let's say you go to work or whatever, okay? And I don't know, maybe let's say it's like let's say you work at like a warehouse, or some sort of factory, okay? Now, knowing your surroundings, knowing your fear, or having a fear of like something falling on you or you getting hurt at work will make you more aware of everything that's going on. You're like, okay, so I work at this warehouse. I have to carry these boxes, or I have to work with this machine, or I have to do something with this, or I have to, do whatever. Like if you one of those, if you're a forklift operator, you have this heightened sense of fear or awareness of like, okay, I have to use the machine properly, and I have to get it down, and I have to do what I have to do, and I have to travel with it. Like your fear of the worst that could happen while you're on the machine gives you a sense of priority to your job. You know what I mean? And I guess that might be what it is for most, for like construction workers as well. People who really work outside or work physically, outdoors. I think there's a heightened sense of awareness or a certain level of like precaution that they take. That's why they wear the hard hats. They have the safety gear on. They do everything that they can because that sense of fear makes them more aware, makes them more alert of what's going on. I also think when you're scared, it can be just a very powerful, it could be a good motivation for you to do things. You know what I'm saying? I know there are sometimes those people who are afraid of something, and because they're afraid of it, they're kind of like, maybe I should go do that thing because it'll motivate me to become better, to become stronger, to become more of this type of person. You know what I mean? Let's just say that you don't want anything to hold you back, or you don't want like, man, I'm scared of doing this thing, but because I'm scared of it, maybe I should actually go out there and conquer it, or I should go out there and face it head on, so that way I don't have to be afraid of it. It's a good motivation tactic. You know what I mean? Like if you're afraid of public speaking, or you're afraid of talking to somebody about your feelings, like that's the motivation you need, or that's something that holds you back. And that's actually not a good thing, but it can motivate you. It's like, why am I scared of this? I'm afraid of it. I don't want to be. Let me use that anxiety, that fear, that kind of scaredness to motivate me, to drive me to do something, anything, as long as it's productive, or as long as it pushes me in the right direction of who I want to be, or whoever you want to be. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So motivation is something positive that's being scared or being afraid can push you towards. And there really is a bunch of like, it really is a chemical reaction that happens when we have this boost of adrenaline. You know what I mean? Our body gets scared, and we automatically have like this reaction. You know what I mean? It's like Scooby-Doo and Shaggy. Whenever they encounter something scary, they get this sudden like boost of energy. You know what I mean? We always kind of like see it as just them being goofy or crazy or just like big scaredy cats. But we do notice the change, right? They're kind of like, ooh, I'm so scared. You know what I mean? Bones shaking. They're like, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Like their anxiety is like keeping them so small. And then the monster reveals themselves or whoever comes out, right? And they're like, boo, 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 boo. And then Shaggy and Scooby scream uncontrollably, right? Their eyes brighten up, their body like tenses, and they start going, oh, you know what I mean? And then they start running like crazy and just go, you know what I mean? They start sprinting like crazy, and that's because everything in their body starts. There's a huge chemical reaction going on. They get like this huge boost of adrenaline in their blood. They're able to access. I think that's the right word. They're able to access this amount of stuff in our bodies, like these endorphins and the dopamine and oxygen in our blood. They're able to like utilize it to its maximum and get away, you know, and it gives them that energy to run as fast as they can to get them to act, to initiate fight or flight, you know. And more often than not, when they choose their flight mode, and in their flight, they just so happen to accidentally make a mistake, and then in that mistake, it reveals the bad guy, or it ends up hurting the bad guy, right? Like they'll scream, they'll start running, and they'll have that boost of energy, and the zombie or the monster or whatever will start chasing after them, and then Scooby will have like a banana break. He'll be like, man, you know, getting scared sure makes me hungry, and then he'll throw the banana peel back, and then the monster will slip on the banana peel, boom, and that's all she wrote. You know what I mean? They caught the bad guy, and it was all an accident, but it was in their fear that kind of helped them out. It was in their flight. You know what I mean? But that's a positive. Or what's it? I saw a video, and this isn't a very original video, but it proves my point that it kind of wraps up like the fight or flight response, your sense of awareness, like motivation and the endorphins in our body. Using all of it is like when this guy was like dressing up as Michael Myers, or he's just outside and he's like, you know what? You can hire me. Yeah, he was like making it seem like he was performing a service. It was like, you can hire me to chase you, so that way and try to like kill you, so that way you will run faster than you've ever run before, and you can be a lot more healthy. Like it's a scare tactic to get your body to move, right? So like if your motivation is like to get in shape, your motivation might be very weak because you don't have anything behind you to like motivate you. You don't have anything like to run away from. But if you hire somebody who's crazy enough to kill you, right? Like somebody who can to strike fear into your heart, make you feel really scared. Like if you don't run as fast as you've ever ran before, you're going to die. Like, you know what I'm saying? Then you're just gonna, that's the motivation you need. You know what I mean? And you're going to be aware that somebody's chasing after you. Your flight response is going to say, I need to get away. And it's going to be a clear motivation for you to like, I need to get faster so I can run far away from this person. And you're utilizing your anxiety, you're utilizing your adrenaline, and you're working on your lungs to breathe more and have better breath control. You know what I'm saying? All of these things combined really help you out. But Now, this isn't like an original idea, or like this is a kind of a funny way of looking at it, but that kind of motivation works wonders. So as crazy or as funny as it may seem, is that like this guy's going to chase you down and he's going to stab you with a knife if you don't start running faster. If you don't start getting out there and being healthy, then it's kind of like, you know what I mean? You have to look over your shoulder and you have to be like, oh snap, this guy's coming after me. He's going to kill me. You know? That gives you the motivation you need. That gives you the trigger. And with that, you'll become healthier. You'll become in the best shape of your life, no doubt. You know what I mean? So it's because of that it kind of helps us out. It pushes us to do more. You know what I mean? It's kind of like in The Dark Knight Rises. It's like when you're afraid, you don't jump as high. When you're not afraid, you don't reach out as far. You don't do more, right? Like fear is a good motivation. It's a good way to get us to the best version of ourselves because we're afraid. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like when you see small animals attack, right? It's because they're scared. And you've backed them into a corner and they have no choice but to attack. You know what I mean? They've already tried running away. They've been caught. So now it's like, this is the last resort. I have to fight. You know what I'm saying? I have to use all my strength to try to get away. And it works out. And then there's also like there's kind of like being scared of or temporary scaredness, I should say, like a haunted house. When you go to a haunted house and you're afraid that somebody's going to jump out and scare you, or the anxiety before you go on a roller coaster ride, like that's a level of fear or a certain part of being scared that's like, I feel it's kind of natural, but I also enjoy it because I know once I get on the roller coaster ride, I'm going to feel so much better. Does that make sense? Like I'm definitely going to feel like I'm going to feel really good afterwards, and I'm going to be like, that was no big deal. Let's get back on it again. But before I get on there, I have this like, I'm like, okay, I'm really scared. I have like a little bit more anxiety, and you're just kind of like, okay, I just got to get on there, and then everything will be a-okay. I'll be just fine. You know what I'm saying? But until then, it can actually be a really fun experience, especially like a group experience. That kind of in those kind of settings, in those kind of like controlled spaces where you're allowed to feel those emotions. You're allowed to feel fear. You're supposed to be scared. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Now, those are kind of all the positives. Maybe I should say that's like those are all of the good things that can come of being afraid or being scared, but there are also some big negatives to all of that. That what I just said. It's like the fight or flight response isn't just like punching somebody or running away. It can actually be like freezing up. Like if you're in a car and you get in a car crash, and you know this if you've ever been in a car crash, it's kind of like you go through slow motion. You kind of go like through this fear of like, oh my gosh, like everything's happening all at once, and it's like it just happens slower for you, and you feel like you're stuck, you're paralyzed. Now, if you're truly scared, if you're truly afraid of like getting into a crash, then freezing up is not good, because when you freeze up, you won't swerve the car out of the way, or you won't try to move, or you won't, you know what I'm saying? Like being frozen or having that flight response can sometimes be a negative, or like, like I said earlier with the gunman thing, he's shooting down people, and then rather than running away or trying to find a way to escape or get away, you freeze up and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then boom. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a negative response to being scared, you know? And sometimes it could be seen as positive, right? Freezing might give you more of a moment to take in your surroundings or see what's actually going on, but at the same time, it just if it stops you from doing anything that protects you, it kind of, is will hurt you in the long run, So, like possums will play dead. That's like a flight tactic. They don't run away or they don't fight back. They play dead so that way, their predators will lose interest. They're like, oh, there's no kill. Now I don't know. That rarely seems like a good idea because at some point you're gonna have to breathe and you're not gonna be able to make it. But I don't know. I just feel like that doesn't really work. I also think that if you suppress or like you hold down your fear or anything that you're afraid of, it will take a toll on you. So sometimes you just have to get it out of you have to be able to get it out of your system in a healthy way. Like it's one thing to do it in a controlled space, like I said, like an amusement park, like getting at your fears of. I'll go back to exposure therapy or being exposed to stuff, right? Like if you're constantly afraid of swimming or if you're constantly afraid of heights, right? These are things that you don't necessarily have to conquer or these are fears that we can live with, right? But we suppress it a lot. We hold it in. We hold it deep inside of ourselves and we don't really let it out from time to time. Now, for me, I'm not afraid of heights. I'm not afraid of swimming, but I get it out in a controlled space. So if you're afraid of something or if there's something scary that's holding you back and you suppress it all the time, right? Like when I said I was afraid of driving, if I suppressed that all the time and I never really went out there and practiced driving, I would never be as good of a driver as I am now. I wouldn't be as capable of driving or being on the road like I am now, And those are negative results of not facing my emotions or not facing things that are difficult, How often do we avoid doing something because it's emotionally going to be damaging to us? Or I'll say for a lot of people, we're afraid of rejection. You know what I mean? That's why we want something that's a for sure thing, something that we know for a fact is gonna result in us succeeding, because we're afraid of failing. We're afraid of rejection. We're afraid of somebody telling us no. But holding in those feelings or holding in something when you know for a fact you want to try it, right? And you may fail, you may be bad at it, but the benefits of trying it and failing are more positive than wanting to try something and then never going for it. You know what I'm saying? It's going to hold you back a lot of the times, emotionally and physically, it might lead to depression, and then that'll keep you from being your best self. It'll weigh you down physically. But those are the consequences. But sometimes holding in all of that fear, holding in all of the things that scare us can hold us back at the same time. But like I said, to flip it, if we don't hold it in, or if we find a positive way of using it to our advantage, it could be the perfect motivation to push us to do something, to try something, to be that person that we know we can be. You know what I'm saying? So it's great. Now, there are also, when you're scared of something, there are irrational fears. And these irrational fears can sort of cause us to do things that we shouldn't normally do, or they leave us with a sense of being paranoid, or they leave us paranoid and afraid of little things that happen. Like, I have an irrational fear of a snake coming out of my toilet and biting me on my butt. Like that's a real fear. Like, it'll just, like, out of nowhere, it'll just swim up, and then it'll just see me and be like, it's dark in here, and then try to bite its way out. And it'll, like, now that's an irrational fear. Now that's something that's like, or is that what it's called, irrational fear? Or it's like it's just a crazy, scary situation or whatever. It's just something. It's something that has a small likelihood of happening, but the idea that it could happen is scary. You know what I'm saying? But other people's irrational fears can kind of push them to do something outside of their character, outside of who they are. It can lead them to hurting themselves or hurting other people, and it could just go down this deep, dark pit of fear and despair and you know, trying to hurt other people. If you've ever seen this movie called Minority Report, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are certain people in the movie that are like, I don't know if you could call it irrational fears, but I feel like there are certain things that in the back of your mind you're kind of afraid of, and when you turn out to be found correct in your fears, or like in your paranoia or anxiety, it can lead you to like trigger you into doing something wrong, you know? And then finally, I think another negative aspect of fear, of being afraid or being scared, when you're scared, is that like it can sometimes cloud our judgment. It can make us a little stupider. You know what I'm saying? We can kind of like, why didn't you, when you watch a scary movie, like, why are these guys doing this when they should do this? Like, it's so smart for us. But when you're in the moment, when you're genuinely afraid, you're kind of like, okay, like, I can understand that, like, they're idiots because they're scared. They don't know what they're doing because they're scared. They could have chosen this decision, but they chose that because they're afraid. They're not thinking right. You know what I'm saying? So it just kind of all, it could just cloud our ability to make decisions. And that can happen when we get stuck, right? You're paralyzed by your own fear, by your own being scared. So in conclusion, I think when you're scared, there are a lot of positive benefits. There are a lot of good things that come out of it, you know? You're more aware of your surroundings. It can be a great motivation for you. It can give you the energy you need to do things, right? It's actually a quite good experience to feel that fear and have it in a positive way. And that's why I like roller coasters. I'm not going to say I like haunted houses because they're not like that scary anymore. But when done right, you know what I mean? They're good bonding. You know, they're a good bond. Let's see. And then some negatives of it is it could be fight or flight for you, right? Like, it could be a negative to fight. It could be a negative to flight, but it's also like there's the freeze aspect. You know what I mean? You can just tense up and not do anything, and that could be a negative thing. It could stunt your emotional growth. It could stop you from doing more things because you're suppressing your fear. And I don't know, that by suppressing it, it's hard for you to feel it or to express the full range of your emotions when you hold it in all the time. Then there's the irrational fears that sometimes make us act out of character, and they can sometimes be silly or ridiculous, but at the same time they can make us a little bit better, you know what I'm saying? And then it can also make us act a little stupid, it can make us not think straight or think of the most logical solution. Instead we're like, oh, you do things the hard way, I guess. But anyways, when you're scared, I mean, it really depends on the situation, but I say try to look for the benefits in certain things. Like if you're afraid of going to like a haunted house with your friends, or like there's something scary like that, I think that's something that you should definitely like reconsider or conquer, and just be like, you know what? It's kind of going to be scary, but it's going to be over, and then I'm going to go home to my safe space and I'm going to be just fine. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to worry anymore. You know what I'm saying? So I think those are one of those things that when you're scared, you can overcome them, But when you're scared, it's kind of fight or flight. And when that happens, you can listen to your body. You trust in yourself, I think, is the right word I'm trying to find, is that trust yourself, believe in yourself, and most importantly, just make sure you protect yourself. You do what's best for you. You know what I'm saying? If that means getting into a fight, well then sometimes you gotta fight. You know what I mean? I totally support you. If it's running away, or if it's maybe like freezing up or tensing up, I think that if it's naturally you, okay. It's all about how you respond to things. And then once you respond, then you can deal with the aftermath. You know what I mean? So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.